Proof the coronavirus is a biological weapon. Small victories for Hong Kong. And outrage against the Chinese Communist Party. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. The coronavirus. Is it a biological weapon? For a long time, there have been conspiracy theories that the coronavirus that spread from Wuhan, China, was a biological weapon. That's even a conspiracy theory the Chinese Communist Party has pushed. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman tweeted the U.S. Army brought the coronavirus to Wuhan. Keep in mind, he's not just any old crackpot conspiracist. He's the Foreign Ministry spokesman for a country. But we'll never know for sure if the coronavirus was a biological weapon, right? Well, proof has just come out that it is a biological weapon, just not the kind of biological weapon you were thinking of. See, most of the United States medical supplies and generic drugs are made in China. Great choice, by the way. And now, Communist Party mouthpiece Xinhua is saying they can impose pharmaceutical export controls to, quote, throw America into the mighty sea of the coronavirus. When the Communist Party threatens to attack America by withholding critical medical supplies needed to stop a deadly virus outbreak, that is a biological weapon. If only America had been willing to do the Chinese Communist Party's bidding, this would have never happened. Speaking of not doing the Communist Party's bidding, President Donald Trump. He loves to call it the Chinese virus. And the Communist Party hates that.
Recently, some U.S. politicians have linked the novel coronavirus to China. This is a smear of China. We are very angry and strongly oppose it.
Yeah, some U.S. politicians, not going to name names here. Now, I recommend you watch my recent episode, Coronavirus, How China Spun Criticism into Racism, for a better understanding of what the Communist Party is trying to do here. But in a way, I agree with the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman. I think President Trump needs to stop calling it the Chinese virus. That's because we're just getting into stupid fights about whether saying Chinese virus or Wuhan virus is racist, which turns into fights about whether Trump is racist, which turn into fights about whether everyone is racist. This is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party wants, because it means we're so busy fighting each other that we're losing sight of the bigger picture here. I don't advocate calling the coronavirus the Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus. It's unfair to the Chinese people who are victims of their authoritarian regime, the one that caused this problem in the first place by covering up the spread of the virus and silencing people who tried to get the truth out. Let's not forget that it's the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, that's ultimately responsible for this pandemic and all the people who will die from it. So I say, from now on, we call it the CCP coronavirus. All the cool kids are doing it, which is why I have to tip my hat to the Florida law firm that is suing the Chinese regime for their coronavirus cover-up. The Chinese government suppressed information from the global medical community that could have averted or minimized the damage that has been done. So, props to that Florida law firm, because if there's one foe the Chinese Communist Party should be afraid of, it's Florida man. I assume that's what lawyers in Florida look like. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party completely denies the ridiculous accusations that they would ever want to suppress information. On a totally unrelated note, China just announced it will expel American journalists. That includes American journalists working for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. That is a blow. I wonder if those media companies will continue taking money from China's propaganda department to publish the Communist Party propaganda called China Watch in their newspapers. Chinese authorities say their decision to expel American journalists is because the Trump administration put restrictions on Chinese state-run media operating in the U.S. because, you know, they're Chinese state-run media and therefore by definition agents of the state. But even those restrictions did not expel all the journalists or force those Chinese media to shut down. Still, China's foreign ministry spokesman said this is ultimately America's fault.
完全是对美方
The steps China has taken are countermeasures to the U.S.'s unreasonable oppression of Chinese media. China is compelled to take them. China shouldn't be responsible for the cause and the result of the current situation. If any American media has any issue, please raise it to the U.S.
不
government.
过哪家美国媒体对此有什么意见？
That's a tall order. I can't remember a time when American media have ever been willing to criticize the U.S. government. But the Trump administration is not taking China's actions lying down.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Tuesday hit back at China over its decision to kick out American journalists from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post.
The Chinese will tell you that they want more information, people to know more about their country, and yet they continue to take actions like the one you see today, where they deny the world the capacity to know what's really going on inside of their country.
I can't imagine what the Chinese Communist Party would be trying to cover up. The Chinese Communist Party has been trying to spin the coronavirus at home and abroad. Focus less on the cover-up and more on how swift, decisive, transparent, and cooperative China's coronavirus response has been. In other words, they're lying through their teeth. State media have also been praising their state media reporters for their brave coverage of the epidemic. Like Liao Jun. Only problem is, Chinese people hate all of it. Chinese social media has recoiled with anger at the lionization of Ms. Liao, saying she helped propagate fictions that clouded the severity of the outbreak in its early days. And that anger is now flaring into broader attacks on the Communist Party's muzzling of the news media. So now, the party will do what it always does when its propaganda backfires: attack the critics. Online enforcers are dragging in hundreds for questioning as an assault on online speech continues. That includes any pesky tycoons who criticize Xi Jinping. Wait, are we actually getting to the point where Chinese citizens are less likely than Americans to believe Chinese Communist Party propaganda? Speaking of the party's coronavirus cover-up, remember Dr. Li Wenliang? He was detained by the police after warning his colleagues about the coronavirus on Chinese social media. He later died of the coronavirus himself, which sparked a huge backlash against the government in China. Well, Chinese authorities have investigated Dr. Li's case, and guess who's to blame? The local police! It was their fault, and they will be dealt with accordingly. The investigators also wanted to clear up one little thing. You see, it appears that some hostile forces are attacking the Communist Party by calling Dr. Li a hero for standing up to the system. Well, the joke's on those hostile forces because Dr. Li was a member of the Chinese Communist Party. Is that really the message you want to go with? Dr. Li was a member of the Communist Party, which was ultimately responsible for the spread of the disease that killed him. So there, we showed you. In other news, now might be a good time to quit the Chinese Communist Party. Speaking of getting rid of the Chinese Communist Party, here's an update about Hong Kong. You may remember how the city has been embroiled in massive protests against the Chinese regime for 9 months. Well, according to a Reuters exclusive, what we all thought was happening turns out to have been true. Officers from China's top internal security force, the People's Armed Police, joined Hong Kong police on the front lines. Color me shocked. But another blow may be coming to the forces of evil in Hong Kong. Remember back in August when Hong Kong police attacked protesters on the Hong Kong subway? Well, a court has ordered the subway operator to release CCTV footage of it. Authorities claim there was no police brutality. Really? Well, now they might have a harder time denying that. Another small victory for the Hong Kong protest movement. Chan Kim-man, one of the leaders of the 2014 Umbrella Movement, has been released from an 11-month prison sentence he got for peacefully protesting. He said he has no regrets. But Europe is about to have some major regrets. France is going to allow Huawei gear in its 5G network. The US has called Huawei a national security threat since it's closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. You know, the one responsible for the CCP coronavirus that's spreading around the world. I guess France surrendered to the pressure. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is also a fan of Huawei. She's trying to block other lawmakers from blocking it. It's like there's a split in Berlin where one side is in favor of the communists. Speaking of which, Merkel says there's no reason to be suspicious of gifts of medical supplies from China. I believe this is how they're shipping them. Part of the problem with getting medical supplies from China is how the Chinese regime uses them as propaganda. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying shared this video of Italians singing "Thank You China" as the Chinese national anthem plays. The problem is, it's fake! Or as the Italians say, fake news. With the CCP coronavirus happening, many people have been forced to stay at home. But even so, exercise is still important. I would just think military exercises might not be the priority. Despite the pandemic, the Chinese regime is still finding time to harass Taiwan. Some things never change. Next up, I'll answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored on Patreon. But first, did you know YouTube has been secretly unsubscribing people from the show? Take a moment to make sure you're still subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? All right. This question comes from Carbide149. Would you say that ordinary citizens are falling for China's lies as much as media outlets and politicians have? Now, that's actually a question with a very encouraging answer. Some Western media are unfortunately eating up the propaganda about racism, and the lies that China's response to the coronavirus was so much better than the West's. But as I mentioned earlier in the episode, many Chinese people are furious at the Chinese regime. China was the worst hit by the CCP coronavirus pandemic, and the response by the regime has been more brutal than helpful. A lot of people in China also know the party tried to cover it up and persecuted doctors who tried to blow the whistle. And this reminds me of something Chinese lawyer Chen Guangcheng told Shelley in an interview a couple of months ago. The people he's in contact with in China all understand that the Chinese Communist Party is the cause of the problems in Chinese society. They just can't say so online because they might be arrested. But they know it and they don't like it. So someday, I really think the Chinese Communist Party will be taken down by the Chinese people. And many reporters in the West will be left scratching their heads wondering how it happened. That's how it went down with the Soviet Union. That's how it's going to go down with the Chinese Communist Party. Thanks for your question, Carbide149. And thank you for watching. Remember, YouTube has been demonetizing almost all of our videos. They'd have run us out of business if it weren't for support from fans like you, who contribute through the crowdfunding website Patreon. I call them the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army. If you'd like to hear your question answered on the show, join the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army by going to patreon.com/ChinaUncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.